Welcome back to the story of the Clematis cuttings. If you saw the first instalment, we were in early March. In fact, we were the 9th of March, and I was cutting back the long growth on some young clematis plants to encourage the plants themselves to bush up, which they've done, and they are in the ground now and growing away really well. But in so doing, I took the tips and I used rooting powder, and I positioned them around the edges of small pots, and I've kept them in the warm greenhouse on a little bit of bottom heat, just to see whether I can root any of these and grow new plants from what would have otherwise been waste material. So we are now right at the end of April. We're talking probably 6-7 weeks since we did these cuttings. Let's have a look and see. I know already that I've had better success with some pots than others. There were 4 cuttings per pot. I can still see, I think, 4 plants in here, but as you can see, some didn't make it, and that's not unusual. The other 3 in there appear to have done, and if you can just make out, there is some new growth right on the bottom there. So really confident that this one's taken if it's showing signs of growth like that. And in this pot, I've only got 2 of the 4 remaining. So these are all the same variety, and for today I'm just going to take them out of their pots, establish whether they're rooted, and those that look good are going to go into individual pots to grow on and develop a much stronger root system before I think about putting them anywhere near the great outdoors. So let's start with the little pot with 2. So we're 2 down in here already. Just gently going to lift him out. Now straight away, before I do anything else, you can see the grit that I put in the bottom of a small pot for drainage purposes. Here we go, look. Clearly evidence of a really strong root system growing there. And if I can turn myself the other way, that one not looking anywhere near as positive. Whilst the top growth hasn't died, I'm just going to gently ease this one away. There is no immediate or obvious sign of real rooting on that one. There may well be if I knock off some of that dirt. I'm loath to do that. I'm going to take a chance and pot him up anyway, but I'm not particularly optimistic. However, this one, I've every reason to be very optimistic about. So I'm just going to lift him gently away. I'm just going to get rid of that compost. Do bear in mind, with whatever medium that you're using to grow your plants, be they from seed or cuttings or however, there's only so much goodness and nutrient in the soil that you're using, and I favour multi-purpose compost for nearly everything that I do. It doesn't get too solid, it doesn't clag up and get too wet. This usually will feed your plants for about 6 weeks. And beyond that, you need to start to think about whether your young plants are ready for feed, and what sort of growth you're trying to develop, whether you're working towards flowers or you're working on roots or leaves or whatever, and you feed appropriately. So this little fella, I'm going to take my pot, get a decent amount of soil in. Now, I need this to be reasonably firm because I now want this chap to really start to anchor in. I'm going to still pop him on the corner. My instinct there is he will continue to run roots around well, and I'm going to fill him up to the top. And just keep shaking and tamping. So I'm not trying to turn the soil into concrete. I don't want to shake that much out of it, but I don't want big pockets of air. So very quickly, I'll pot up this other chap that I said we'll just give him a further chance. I suspect with this one, over the next few weeks, he'll show signs as we get hotter and drier weather that he hasn't made it. So I'm going to put him to one side. Right, let's have a look at this one. this pot, which has 3 plants, hopefully, in, but one that we're fairly confident is growing. Okay, so again, very little. Aha, 1 root. So that one is worth keeping. And both of these have roots on. So the chap with new growth perhaps has slightly more. But it just goes to show, I suppose, that you can't second guess what's going on under soil level. So let's take these gently out. You'll notice I'm handling them by the main shaft of the cutting. I'm not touching the roots at all if I can help it. I don't think that would do the plants any favours whatsoever. Now I'm going to stand these pots onto a tray with gravel in the bottom and water them that way. So I'm not actually putting drainage into the bottom. These are interim homes only for these plants. As soon as they do establish properly, then they will get on with it. Just put a bit more in here. So all the rooted ones are on this side. Make sure, if you're buying bags of multi-purpose compost, like I do, that when you tip out the compost, quite often you'll find where it's stored in the bag, it can develop quite hard lumps, dry, solid masses really. That's a very small example. So I tend to tip the bag out into whatever tray I'm using at the time, and then just play through it with my fingers and break up any of those lumps. Again, what you're trying to do with these young plants is encourage them to grow as quickly as reasonably possible into healthy plants. So by removing any unnecessary obstacles, you can but help. Now what's interesting, if you saw the first video, you might remember that we took the cuttings and there were 2 branches of leaves on each one. And we talked about the fact that I was going to root from the base, but I was going to cut off one of the side flanks in an effort to see if that one would produce at all. I would say so far the only plant that's actually shown any sign of doing that is this one with the extra bit of growth. So most of them don't appear at this stage anyway to be showing very much activity at that top nodal point. Right, we'll just get him in. Making sure again we've got no great lumps in there. I'm still burying that point. Technically, I suppose it could be seen as a wound, so I don't particularly want it to be exposed. Right, so this is the one with 4. Can't really tell. That may be new growth there as well. That single leaf down there, because the leaf is in the wrong place. It would be at the ends. So I think we've got a second one that's probably rooted quite well. But again, very little, if any, sign on that one. Same for this one. So he is growing, although there are there's one tiny root. Don't know if you can pick that up. A slightly white stem just appearing. It's got a big lump of dirt on the end of it at the moment. But he is clearly alive and kicking because he has grown that new leaf from that point. Whereas this one, just get rid of him. Looks quite healthy in the leaf, but I have to say I don't think the stem looks particularly healthy compared to the others. So I'm going to make a decision on that one and discard it. It's almost as if something's eaten away at that stem. There's nothing there that I can see in terms of healthy material to work with. So I'm simply going to get rid of him. And in the meantime, I'll pop these on. So do these two quickly and then we'll have a look at the tally. So I believe we started off with 12 potential new plants from the cuttings that we took back in March. And whilst I just concentrate on potting these last couple, I'm not going to concentrate on trying to add up how many we've got just yet. Let's put a bit more soil in there first. That one I'm allowing to come just off the edge. I don't really want that growth point to get too damp on the corner, so I'll bring him in a bit and see what happens. Just bring the soil level up to where it would have been before and try not to press on that growth point. So 2, 4, 6, 7 out of 12. I don't think that's too bad for this time of year, and given that all this material would have gone on the compost heap, I'm actually quite pleased with that. Thank you very much for watching.